I want to share some of the different texts that I have been researching in the last month or so related to the novel Thirst. I hope that it will save you some time looking for resources to use with this book. I did spend a great deal of time watching a ton of different documentaries and videos. And so I thought I would share some of the ones that I found that I think would be good to use and when it would be a good time to use them. So I'm going to try to keep it as short as I possibly can. I'm not very good at doing that, but here we go. This is my third try. Third time's the charm. So the first section that I think some topics that you may want to include is um, colonialism, India's independence. You may want to include something about Gandhi, but I think the most important one to include is something about the partition of India. Um, and what I am referring to, if you're unfamiliar, is when India gained their independence from Great Britain. Part of that agreement was that India was divided into India and East and West Pakistan. And it was divided based on religious majority groups. So Pakistan, East and West, was for um, Muslim people, and India was for Hindus. And that was kind of a historically important thing. And I would include something about that because in the book, they talk about how Minnie and her best friend, Minnie is Hindu, and her best friend is Muslim. And it's kind of uh, an important element in the book. And I would definitely want to give kids some more background knowledge on why that is a big deal and why it is important. So, here are some of the resources that I looked at that I'm going to share. If you're looking for a documentary on India, this one right here, The Story of India, is probably going to be one of the top things that comes up. It is 6 episodes long. Episode 5 and 6 would be the only ones I would consider using, but I don't think your students would be very engaged with these documentary videos in The Story of India. Um, and I would pass on that one, just letting you know. This TED Ed video about the partition of India, I think is really good, but just a heads up, they do talk about violence and rape. So, heads up if you want to watch that or not. It is 5 minutes long, so you could easily watch it and see if it is appropriate for your students or not. Just because I'm recommending something doesn't mean automatically it's okay and you should use it because every class is different. Even among the same age group, one class in one part of a country or in one country could be different as far as what would be deemed appropriate. So, definitely, if you think something that I'm recommending sounds interesting, definitely watch it yourself first to make sure that it is appropriate for your students, the community that you teach in, etc. This documentary here, there's 2 parts. Part 1, and it has 3 segments. So, segment number 1 in part 1 talks about Gandhi and the Salt March. And those are topics that are mentioned in the book. So, you may want to um, have students go a little bit deeper into learning about that. It is kind of an important thing to learn about because Gandhi's teachings influenced a lot of civil rights activists, um, not just in our country, but in other countries. So you may want to include something about it. Up to you. This video here about the caste system, sorry that it's blurry, but there's a lot of videos out there about the caste system. I chose this one because it was short, and some of the other videos, if you're going to use a video for about the caste system, which I think you should include some kind of information about the caste system. make sure you watch them all first, because oftentimes they talk about violence and rape, and that may not be appropriate for your students. This one does not. It's okay, but watch it first to be sure. Moving on to cultural connections. So there are several topics that I'm going to touch on, and some different resources that I thought were really good. Starting with, did I skip it? No, I guess I didn't. Religion. So again, back to that partition of India and the importance of Minnie and her best friend, one being Hindu, one being Muslim. I would definitely use some kind of a resource, whether it's text-based or video-based, to have students learn more about what is Hinduism, what is Islam, what do Hindus believe, what do Muslims believe, where is their common ground. The video that I'm showing here was incredible. Loved it. It might be a little bit long, and it might be a little too mature. It doesn't have bad language or anything, but the language may be too difficult for your students to understand. It's not a video that's necessarily made for kids. I wouldn't say it's inappropriate, but it's worth watching yourself anyways. I loved the way they did this video. The people sitting on the left are Hindus. The people sitting on the right are Muslims. They're all standing around, and then the facilitator will ask a question about a belief or an experience, and people who have that belief or who have had that experience step forward, and then they discuss it. And super, super interesting video to watch. This could be used with any resources, but I did make this page to have students kind of compare Hindu beliefs and Muslim beliefs. So you don't need to use it with this. It could be used with anything. But this is a super cool video that I think is worth checking out. Maybe not appropriate for your students, but worth watching nonetheless. Now on to Netflix. Street Food. I love, love, love this series. And Street Food Asia has an episode on Delhi, India. And one of the reasons I love this so much is because they talk about different foods a lot. Food is really important in not just the novel, but in general. It's an important part of community and culture. And I really like this documentary series because it kind of doesn't just show the food, but it gives the backstories of the people who are street food vendors, and it connects with family and community, and it talks about street food vendors and how that is an important element of a community because they preserve traditional dishes and traditional ways of making dishes. And yeah, super good one. Definitely would use this. I made a YouTube playlist with all of the resources that I decided were worth sharing. And some of them are super short, which is great. And I wanted to kind of touch on some of those super short ones and an activity that I really, really like to do. I made a YouTube video about it called Text Talks. But before I get too far into that, this video here about the caste system, they will mention rape. This video right here, Why Am I Untouchable? Loved this one. Loved this one. But she does, when she's talking about untouchable people and the work that they do, she does say the word shit. They bleep it out, but you can still kind of tell what she said. So I don't know if that's okay in your class or not, but if it would be okay. This is a super interesting video because it gives a different perspective on it. But anyways, with all these short videos, this is a good way to get kids to learn about a whole bunch of different topics. And I made a video called Text Talks before, and it's just like a book talk with a presentation, super fast. You can do it in one class period with a less than 10-minute video. They make 3 slides. And it's a great way for kids to get exposed to a whole bunch of different texts um, while they only read one text. So, like a jigsaw type of thing, right? So, I would definitely, if you're interested in using that, I would check that out because it's basically no prep and it's a super engaging activity. The kids always really liked it. Um, this activity here, this resource, I used before. I've used this with Amal Unbound. And when I was reading this book, during week 4 is when I would use this. And I would use it to connect with when she's talking about how the math doesn't add up. And she's talking about all the different women that she knows who were not able to complete their education. I would pair this resource with that. I don't believe there's anything inappropriate here. In my opinion, there was not. But again, check it first. They're less than 10 minutes, so check it first before you use it. But this would be a great resource to have kids do a 2-voice poem about the differences between one person's experience with education and another person's experience with education. This is a resource that I also used in the free lesson that I shared on my blog. So if you went to my blog and you downloaded that, then you have these pages. And it's so for each week, I have a discussion prompt where students watch a paired text and they have kind of a guided page to do, and they share a video using Flipgrid with their thinking about what they watched related to a prompt. I have a prompt for each week that goes with the resource that I've shared. And then they do a reflection where they summarize what did they say and what did some 2 other people say. And then they reflect on how their thinking has changed. You maybe have seen this activity before because if you've used any of my other lessons or you've done any of my Global Read Aloud stuff, I use this all the time. I've been making this thing for I don't even know how long. It's one of my favorite things to do. So if you didn't get that off my blog, you should get that. This video, similar to the ones I just shared, but it's just a different story. And it's not from Girl Rising. It's from, I think UNICEF did this. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's a series called To Educate a Girl, and it shows different girls in different countries. This particular story is a girl who lives on the border of India and I think Bangladesh. I can't remember. But her brother disappears. Dad has to go looking for him in the city because they live in a rural area. And mom is so upset by the whole thing that she's unable to work. And so the oldest daughter has to go to work so that her other sisters can remain in school. Sounds really connected to the text, right? If you've read Thirst already, totally goes with the text. This I also used before with the Bridge Home. I love the Global Oneness Project. They do some amazing stuff. And they have a short film about a boy named Amar, and it goes through his daily activities. It's a documentary film, and it's very like time-based. So at this time, this is what he does. At this time, this is what he does. And I think it's a great way for students to kind of see what a day in the life is like for someone whose life is different from theirs, but also it kind of connects to the text. During week 3, when Minnie has to start taking on more responsibilities because her mom has gone away to get better, she has to do her mom's job while she's still going to school. So it's super connected with that topic in the text. This one, same thing, Amar still also was in one of the weekly discussion topics that I shared on my blog. So I would download that. Free stuff. This particular documentary right here, I couldn't not talk about this. I don't know if you would use it in your class or not, because it is quite long. And you would want to watch it first to make sure that it's appropriate for your age group of students. But this I wanted to just share because it is amazing. It was nominated for, or it won, I can't remember, an Academy Award. And it is about a group of women who are from the untouchable class who start their own media outlet. And the film kind of follows them through the development of, first it was paper based and moving into digital. And they have a digital channel on YouTube. They have an Instagram account. One of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life. And I watch documentaries almost every day. Highly recommend this one. It was nominated for a reason. It's so good. So I would definitely check that out. Maybe there's parts of it you want to share. It is long though, and I think at about an hour and 10 minutes, can't remember exactly, I wrote it down somewhere. There's some content that maybe you might not want to share. I don't know, if it's appropriate for your students or not, but there is some violence. They don't really show it, so I feel like it would still be appropriate. I would share it with my students, and I would obviously be, talking them through it all. But check it out. It's super good. Last but not least is the environmental connections in the text. So nonfiction texts that tie into some of the environmental issues, especially with water. So let's take a look at those. This one is actually not totally about water, but it does touch on water issues. It's from a German news outlet. It's about 40 minutes long. This was a great documentary. I really liked it. I watched so many documentaries and I was like, this one was good. I would maybe use this or parts of it when you're at that part where Minnie's class has to come up with some kind of an app that solves a problem, because this documentary will highlight a lot of problems related to urban development. Also, one of the people in the documentary, he's a contractor. He lives in one of the big high rises, and they show his house, and he ends up. They state that he was arrested for fraud and embezzlement. The perspectives that are shared in this documentary are really interesting, from the people living in the skyscrapers talking about how they want to tear down the slums, to what it's like living in Dharavi. Amazing community going on there in Dharavi. And I don't know, this is just a really good documentary. I would definitely use this one. I even made some stuff for it. So I just wanted to briefly touch on, when you are watching a longer documentary, sometimes it is hard to get kids to pay attention. As a history teacher, I showed a lot of documentaries because I taught history and English, and kids would often use that time to do something else or take a nap or whatever. So one way that I came up with to have them really focused on the documentary that we were watching was this documentary bingo. And I would watch the documentary first and write down some of the key words that were in the documentary. So then when the kids watch the documentary, when they hear one of the words, they get to fill in the card with whatever words they choose. But when they hear one of the words, then they mark off their little bingo card, and, I give them a piece of candy or something. Helps to get them to pay attention to the super important things that I wanted them to learn from that documentary. Sometimes I don't give them any words, so then it's a no prep activity. I have them fill in the word bank. Oh, we're going to watch a documentary about this topic. What words do you think you will hear while we're watching it? And then they fill in the bingo card with the vocabulary. Another handout that I made to go with this documentary, because it really highlights some of the problems related to growing populations. And some of the key problems are transportation, pollution, resource management, poverty, and space. Now, there are some parts in the documentary where they are showing people on trains, and the trains are way too overcrowded, and people die. Lots of people die on the trains. They fall, they're hanging out the doors and everything, and they fall off, and, bad things happen. They don't show, anything super gory or somebody getting killed, but I just wanted to let you know that that was in there. Another part when they're talking about the space issue, where the city has grown, so it's now right up against the nature preserve, and leopards come in and take people's children, like small children. So that is in there as well. If that's okay or not okay, you need to decide that yourself, but just letting you know what kinds of things are in there to save you the time. This documentary was super duper interesting. I don't think there was anything inappropriate in this one, or, questionably appropriate. I wrote down some times when they talk about some different things for you. At 28 minutes, they talk about toxins in unsafe water, and you may want to show just that part. At 38 minutes, they talk specifically about Mumbai. And I think you maybe would want to show this during week 2 when Minnie's mom gets sick. I think it would be appropriate to show anytime. But I did want to point out that it is kind of a bummer of a documentary to be watching. And I do like to pull in multiple perspectives and not just show problems, but also solutions. And there's a man called the Waterman of India, Rajendra Singh. He is an environmental activist, and he has saved a bunch of rivers that were deemed to be dead, meaning that they were so polluted, the oxygen level was so low. And he has rehabilitated these rivers. And because of that work, the surrounding communities, the rural farming communities, have also begun to thrive. And so I would look for something that kind of balances out the problem with, here's some positive things that people are doing. This 2-minute video, Reviving Rivers, talks about some of the work that he's done. But if you do a search for him, even if you just search for the Waterman of India, you'll find some resources. This one also, again, with the showing different perspectives and different stories. Not super connected to the novel, but this was one of my favorite things that I watched. Because India is one of the most biologically and culturally diverse places in the world, I think it's important to share lots of different stories about India, so kids don't come away from this novel thinking everyone in India lives in a slum and, all of that. Like, it's good to share multiple stories about people. And so I've shared some of the times of when they talk about different topics. There's 2 episodes. So this stuff here is from episode 1. The Holi festival is very cool. The solar farms, I would definitely share that part. I thought it was super interesting. They have built some automated robotic mops that clean the solar panels from the dust without wasting a whole bunch of water, and that's super interesting. Also, the voting, how that works when 70-ish% of the population lives in rural areas. How do they get everybody to vote? India is the world's largest democracy, and they kind of show some different stories about people getting to vote. Episode 2 focuses more on water things. They talk about monsoon season and explain, that weather pattern at the beginning of episode 2. Then they go to a village that has this huge step well, where, it's just an architectural wonder. You could show that for like 2 minutes. Very cool thing to see. And then they go into a village called Loktok Lake, and it is a village that floats on the water. and they use some really interesting methods for farming fish, which I thought was very cool. Um, then they talk about the monsoon weather pattern and how that impacts fishermen. And then this part at 2442, Meghalaya, it is the wettest place on earth. Because of that monsoon pattern, when it crosses over the land and when it gets to the mountains, it just dumps all this water there. So it shows how people have learned to live with, having too much water and the flooding and all that. And they make these incredible bridges out of the exposed roots of the trees to get across the rivers that will form from all the water running down the mountains. Super cool. And also the part about Lonar Lake was very cool. So anyways, I think it's just important to give students different views of such a diverse country and people. And this is a good documentary to do that. This is a super short video, also from UNICEF, called Water Is. It's only like a minute long. And during week 2, when Minnie notices a poster that says water is life or something like that, and she does a poem about water, I would show this 1-minute video and have students create some water is posters. I think that would be a fun activity to do. So I wanted to include that. This is the stuff that you can download from my blog post. The weekly prompts, and there I am showing my book with no makeup on. So this is also in there, and it just kind of helps students to make those comments on Flipgrid. So there's a prompt. You'll put your Flipgrid link in here, and then I ask students to comment on 3 other videos. So we do a little bit of teaching on how to comment appropriately. So I wanted to include that in there to help. With a lot of the videos, they do some kind of a thing beforehand in the planning phase so that they can do a good response. And then they do the reflection afterwards. And finally, yes, I am sharing quite a few things for free, but I am not sharing all of my work for free. I know that some people are very anti-teachers pay teachers, and I am sorry if you feel that way, but I do spend a great deal of time making these lessons, doing the research, reading the book, creating everything. So things that are totally my own creation, I don't always give all of that away anymore. This novel unit that I'm making, I am doing it in 2 different formats, printable and digital. And there's going to be a choice board for each thing. So there's going to be stations, nonfiction, daily writing prompts, discussion. Those are the discussion pages are the ones you can download for free on my website. I will be giving away some other things to my subscriber list. So you should get on my subscriber list if you want to get some of the free things that I give away. But yeah, it's going to be done. This is like for the nonfiction station, but there's going to be, I think, I can't even remember, like 4 different stations. It's a lot of work that goes into all these things that I create. And I like to be compensated for my work. So I am sorry that if you don't like teachers pay teachers, but you can still enjoy the free resources that I give away.